everyone, and thanks for your patience. So delighted to be here this morning to present to you our case study of levelling the playing field. I'm here with my colleague Brian Shee, and we are presenting from the University of Limerick, which is in the Midwest of Ireland. So we do invite this will be a very quick presentation, an overview of our experience of working with micro-credentials, particularly with universal um, universal design of learning. And we invite your questions throughout the presentation. Maybe pop them into the chat and we'll address them. Or if there's time at the end, we'll talk to each of them. My something is sorry, having issues with my computer, so we're just going to swap seats for the moment. So higher education, as I was saying, is facing many challenges, and as I was mentioning, all the various different challenges, but micro credentials offer a really interesting solution to addressing a lot of those challenges, particularly in terms of increasing access to education for those who are marginalized. But really, the true value of to increase that access will come when that access is combined with an open and inclusive learning design, such as universal design for learning. And that's the case study that we wanted to present to you today. Where I will start though is just to give you a brief introduction around University of Limerick, our university here. I'm also the MicroCreds project, which I'm the lead on for the institution. And together, you'll see how micro-credentials have developed and have been explored at the University of Limerick. I'll then pass over to my colleague Brian, who will talk you through the different aspects of the inclusive learning design and how that has had an impact on the learner experience. And then we'll draw to a close. So quite a short but a rapid fire kind of snapshot of what we're doing here at the University of Limerick. So, University of Limerick, a beautiful campus. I invite anyone to come and visit. We have about 18,000 students, a number of beautiful buildings, and have quite a healthy international student body. And as I said, a beautiful campus, just recently winning an award at the Educational Awards. But in particular, I suppose what's unique about the University of Limerick is our focus on enterprise and working with them to create this really constructive and supportive environment for our learners. I share here just a few examples of what we have done with our enterprise partners. We have set up what's called a cooperative education program. That is a 1 year or 6 month placement that each undergraduate must complete as part of their degree. So by the time that they have finished, they have a combination of both theoretical learning, but then also the chance to apply that learning in a real world environment. The University of Limerick is also one of the first to introduce executive apprenticeships. So as opposed to craft apprenticeships, these are apprenticeships in the areas of cybersecurity and in AI, again, allowing the learner to both increase their knowledge, but then also to be working at the same time. So that's earn and learn kind of model. The University of Limerick has been very successful in a number of initiatives. So I suppose the thing is that a lot of these initiatives struggle to exist without support from the government. And in Ireland, we are very fortunate to have a number of schemes that we can avail of. Springboard is one of those. It's an employment activation scheme, and annually we would take on 200 to 300 students there, where they get fee subsidies in order to upskill and reskill. Also, we have been involved in specific purpose ones, July stimulus or job stimulus as a result of COVID, where we onboarded a huge number of learners, both onto micro-credentials and to other short courses. And then also our learner fee subsidy, which is active at the moment, again, offering learners that opportunity to avail of upskilling and reskilling initiatives. And it's through this combination of consultation, engagement with enterprise partners to understand where the skills needs are, but then talking to government to ensure that those structures are put in place that we can allow learners to continue with their education. So the MicroCreds project, this is a project, as I said, that I am in the institutional lead on, and it comes out of a recognition that there are needs that need to be addressed right here, right now. At the moment, there's about 61% of workers is estimated, the World Economic Forum estimate that about 61% of workers will require retraining between now and 2027. So that's, a very short time frame, but an understanding that a lot of the workers will need retraining. And but the thing is that a lot of the employers expect that retraining to happen on site, that they don't wish for the learners to step away from their work. They want to have that combination of working and learning. And we do see that a lot of the skills and upskilling is required in the areas of technology, sustainability, soft skills. Look, we could call them power skills. These are the communication skills, transferable skills, and then also the sense of building a sense of lifelong learning. And also from a university perspective, we recognise that there is a change in the demographics that we are going to be of the learner. We recognise that due to the ageing population, that our number of undergraduate students will start to decline. So we have to be ensure that the learners that we are going to be servicing we are offering them something that is relevant and authentic to what their requirements are. So the MicroCreds project came out of this recognition that we need to address the professional learner. It is a collaborative project led out by the Irish Universities Association in association with our seven universities across the country, University of Limerick being one of them. And what it has allowed us to do is really drill into understanding and experimenting with micro-credentials and seeing can we mainstream them. When we talk about micro-credentials, we can see the benefits of them, but the true advantage of them, it comes when you have a consensus and a cohesion in terms of the definition of what a micro-credential is, standards about what we understand micro-credentials should be, and they really are a way of creating pathways for learners to engage in education at whatever point in time they are in their life cycle. So micro-credentials, we have defined them as small accredited courses. They are designed to meet the demands of the learners, of enterprise and of organisation, and they allow for the opportunity for flexible, bite-sized learning experiences that are accessible, and they allow the learners to upskill or reskill in areas that are relevant to them. So it's very much focused on the learner. They take control, they have autonomy and to choose which micro-credential suits their particular needs at that particular point in time. And that can vary over their life cycle. So that's the true benefit of micro-credentials. They allow for that swift upskilling. They address the rapid demands of the workforce. We are all aware that the world of work is changing at a huge rate. There's no point in thinking that this is something that we can we have to keep pace with it essentially, and it's really around trying to see what skills we need in order to keep pace with it, to be resilient, to be adaptable to these changes. And they also allow for us to create pathways to empower learners to diversify their knowledge. So that's the benefits of micro-credentials. We create these kind of flexible opportunities. And just to show you just an example of how we've mainstreamed them here at the University of Limerick, I share with you here it's kind of a timeline, but it's also representative of the number of learners we have onboarded through micro-credentials at the University of Limerick. Starting back in 2016, you'll see that we introduced micro-credentials to companies on request, and we found that there was uptake there. So again, it's that conversation with employers to understand where the needs are. But then in 2020, that's when the MicroCreds project was established, and that project allowed us in UL to create those internal structures that allowed us to mainstream and micro-credentials at the university. And you do see in that at 2020, you start seeing that kind of that spike, that's representative of the experience during COVID, where we had that introduction of fee subsidies through the July stimulus, that we were able to onboard over 1,000 students onto the short courses. And as the project has progressed, we continue to see, though we see, that funding initiative allowed for that spike, but we do see that continuous growth in the number of micro-credential learners coming on board at the University of Limerick. And we do hope to see that continue to rise into the future. At the moment, we have over 150 micro-credentials in a variety of topics, and these particular topics we see as being relevant to the learner, both for their maybe professional development, but also then there's the personal development that we see that certain micro-credentials maybe are more attractive. And I suppose so that's giving you a snapshot of our micro credentials and how we've sought to I suppose introduce them and make them available to learners. And you can see then the impact of it, that the learners are responding to it and are taking up those particular those roles. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Brian. I think we're going to do a swap.
Swap again.
We're going to swap seats. So just bear with us 1 second.
Now, thanks a million, Sarah. And hopefully my accent isn't too strong and you won't have any need for the closed captions. So my name is Brian Shee and I'm the instructional designer for the MicroCreds project at University of Limerick. So when I joined this project nearly 5 years ago, I was tasked with developing a learning design framework that is suitable for micro-credentials, but also for developing optimum learning experiences for the learners that micro-credentials are developed for. So when we set out to sort of develop this learn design framework, we had several things in mind. We want to make sure that the learners had a good experience. We wanted to make sure that the learning design framework that we developed was in line with the principles and ethos of the MicroCreds project, which is about creating lifelong learning opportunities, but also breaking down barriers to education. And one thing we were worried about, like from our research into our target learners, our target learners tend to be people who return to education for the first time in a formal education for the first time in a long time. Some of them may never have actually engaged in third level education before, and a lot of them had never actually engaged in online learning before. So we had a lot of sort of issues to sort of address and deal with, and we wanted to make sure that we delivered an optimum learning experience, a valuable learning experience for our learners, because the MicroCreds project is about creating lifelong learning opportunities and bringing people back into that lifelong learning mindset. But while 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 doing a micro-credential might be moving one step forward in terms of lifelong learning, if they have a poor experience, especially with their background, not returned to education for a while, if you give them a bad learning experience, then you're setting them two steps back. So it's defeating the purpose of the MicroCreds project. So we set out from the very start to make sure that we implemented a learn design framework that was inclusive, accessible, and valuable. So something that goes along with the entire principles and ethos of the MicroCreds project. So we want to make sure that our learn design was accessible and it could be enjoyed by all learners. But the thing is, everyone learns differently. So like there's no standards set way of how people learn. There's different frameworks and these kind of things. But especially with people who have experience, like our micro-credential learners tend to be older than say undergraduates and postgraduate graduates. They've been out in the workforce working. They have family responsibilities. So all these kind of things like that shapes how a person prefers to learn. And we wanted to make sure that we developed a learn design framework that actually tapped into that everyone at the same time could have the same optimum experience. So one of the things we set about implementing across our learn design framework was universal design for learning. And so universal design for learning, it's a learn design approach and a set of principles that recognizes that everybody is different, everybody's unique in terms of how they learn, how they prefer to learn, and how they enjoy their learning. What Universal Design for Learning does, it embraces diversity. So it embraces learning diversity and recognizes that all learners are unique with their own learning styles, responsibilities, their own personal circumstances or professional circumstances, and their own personal obstacles to learning, depending on what's happening in their lives. UDL, Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, it removes barriers. So it strives to remove barriers to learning for all learners and create valuable, engaging learning experiences while allowing learners to utilize their strengths and address their specific needs. And it promotes lifelong learning. So inclusive and engaging learning experiences has been found through research to actually promote and encourage lifelong learning. So this is a set of principles that we set about as the foundation of our learning design framework. Now, UDL, if like there's lots of information out there on UDL and Universal Design for Learning, and it can be information overload. But very simply, what it comes down to is UDL offers choice to learners. It offers choice in how they communicate and engage. It offers choice in how they actually how they absorb and devour content and learning units, learning experiences. And it also gives them choice for how they demonstrate their learning. So this comes down to what is known as multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and multiple means of action and expression. And it's about giving options. So in terms of how they engage and how they communicate, just options for how they actually can engage with the course, how they engage with the lecturer, how they can acquire feedback and offer feedback, whether it be through drop-in sessions, chat functions, discussion forums, whatever it is, just as long as they have a choice. By giving people a choice, you actually improve their motivation and reduce anxiety. So, and I just see with the multiple means of action and expression, like the choice might be something that they want, but the fact might have an option that they particularly they love. But by giving them a choice, you're still reducing pressure on them, and you're adding to the learning experience. Multiple means of representation in UDL, Universal Design for Learning, just about offering them options for how they actually consume the content. So people have different preferences for how they consume the content. Some people might like to be in a classroom and listen to the lecturer talk. Some might want to go out and read it themselves, discover it themselves. Some might want video content, audio, whatever it is. So the way to approach that, instead of developing one form of each, is you make sure you have a mixed content approach in your delivery of any content. So you're not just doing a 2 hour lecture, you're doing like a 5 minute video and then a reading, then a discussion forum, whatever it is, just giving them choice for how they consume the content. By having multiple means and sort of mixed approach to the content delivery, that also improves engagement as well, as been found. We're a big believer in microlearning. So microlearning is that no learning unit should be longer than 7 minutes to complete, whether that be a video, a reading, an addition to a discussion forum, whatever it is. Microlearning, especially with part-time learners, people with lots of responsibilities, it allows them to sort of control their learning a lot more. And also what we found is that the people who actually engage with the microlearning, they come back to devour the bits and pieces that they actually require later on when it comes to doing their assessments and these kind of things. And it's a lot easier to find. Multiple means of action and expression. So this is how they demonstrate their learning. So like in terms of how they actually prove they've achieved learning outcomes and these kind of things would be included in that. So their assessments is the big thing here. Give them a choice of assessment. So if it's sorry, part of the learning outcomes is to demonstrate, they have to do a report, whatever it is, allow them to audio record the report or do a presentation or put together a slide deck. Just two options is fine. As I said, as long as you have the option, a choice, it reduces pressure and makes the learning experience more enjoyable for them. What you find is that people, through their work lives and through their professional lives and the experience they built up over time, they have a preference for one or another in terms of how they deliver information. So people in their job, they might be more used to doing presentations. Give them the option to do a presentation. It takes the lecturer the same amount of time to correct it, whether it's a written report or it's a presentation, and the rubrics are the same for them as well. So just in terms of the learner experience, so does this approach actually work? So give the learners like an inclusive and accessible learning design. And we have been able to test if it does work, because like my role as a learning designer, the instruction designer, I can't force any lecturer who are the subject matter experts to implement this learning design framework. I can only act as an advisor. If they accept it, then we sit down, we storyboard, we do the whole shebang and put it through. But like we've had over 150 micro credentials. Only around half of them have actually implemented an inclusive and accessible learning design. So we did sit down last year to see what the comparison was in terms of learner engagement, and we were able to obtain this learner engagement through our VLE, our virtual learning environment. We use Brightspace here, for example. So we looked at an example of 20 offerings. Now, the 20 offerings I picked was because that they actually had letter grades attached to the final output. The majority of our micro credentials, they're actually pass fail. They're not assigned a letter grade, but I wanted to see if there was a difference in the student performance at the end as well. So we picked these 20 micro credentials from across the 4 different schools in the university. So arts, humanities and social sciences, education and health sciences from the business school, and also science and engineering. So 10 of them had implemented the inclusive learning design framework and 10 of them hadn't. And these are the results. So I'm talking about completion rates here, and I'm not actually talking about completing the actual course. I'm talking about is completing the actual content that's been put up on the VLE. So those micro credentials that didn't have the inclusive learning design in place, 71% of the content was completed on average. But with the inclusive learning design, it was 84% of the content was completed on average. Now, because of who our micro credential learners are, A lot of them coming with a lot of experience, industry experience, personal experience. They didn't need every single bit of content that was up there, but you have to make the option there to do. So it's not a huge difference, but there is still a difference there, 13% more engagement with the content. This was the biggest finding that came back. So this is about the amount of average time spent on the online content. Now, this doesn't include things like the online lectures or group work or assessments or anything like that. This is actually just for the online content. So we're talking about like our micro credentials are usually typically around 6 weeks long. So how long they're actually spending on average over that 6 weeks on the online content on the virtual learning environment. So those who didn't use the inclusive learn design framework, the average time spent on was 15 hours. If when the inclusive learn design framework was used, that doubled, it was 32 hours. Okay, so this is over 6 weeks. That's 6 hours on average per week they're spending on the online content. And what we found as well is, as I said earlier on, they were going back to review things that they needed, just picking what they needed for their particular assessments or group work or whatever it was. They could find it easy because it's chunked up into the micro learning units in short bursts as well. So that was a major finding. We also looked then, as I said, about what the average grade was. Now, our micro-credential students, they tend to be very highly motivated anyway, so they tend to be high performers, but it was still a difference. But with the micro-credentials that didn't have the inclusive learning design in place, the average grade was a B1 across the 10 micro-credentials that didn't use the inclusive learning design framework. Those that did use it, it was a jump. It was only a one letter grade jump to an A2, but the difference is still there. So A2 was the average across those 10 micro-credentials, and the feedback we've gotten from it as well. So we have feedback mechanisms built into all our micro credentials with the inclusive learn design. We're getting great feedback on their experiences. I've one here that I thought was very impactful, and that is, in my academic experience, rarely a course has started touching my deepest conscience, setting me up with energy and enthusiasm. Brilliant and inspiring start. Thank you. And another one then, great work. It was a great experience for me as I was an old age student. Okay, and as I said, majority of our microcredential students tend to be older, haven't engaged in online education before. So the whole purpose of the Learn Design framework is to make sure that they have that they achieve learning outcomes, but also they have a very valuable learning experience, and they want to continue their lifelong journey. And so far, it has been a success in that regard. So just very quickly, just to wrap up in terms of the inclusive learn design, what we found is that it does remove obstacles and it focuses on self-directed learning. It helps meet diverse needs of the learners. Like I said, every learner has their own responsibilities, obligations, preferences, these kind of things. It led to higher engagement, so more time spent on the virtual learning environment content, had higher completion rates, and also in terms of sharing experiences, like we use discussion forums a lot, and they actually work very well. People learn from each other, you get that pure learning and pure engagement. And as the feedback shows, it did lead to very enjoyable learning experiences with positive learner feedback, and it addresses the current needs of the learners, and it also taps into their own prior learning and prior experiences as well, and also offered them more opportunities to apply the learning in more practical settings as well. So we're a big believer in hands-on experiential learning approaches also. So I want to thank you all very much for your attention. And again, apologies for the technical glitches at the start, and we'd be delighted to take any questions now.